The wind howled across the empty valley, tearing through trees and shaking every door in the small human settlement. Lightning split the sky, painting the hills in blue light for just a second before everything went dark again. Ilara tightened her coat around her shoulders and pushed open the creaking door of her cabin. Rain hit her face like needles as she stepped onto the porch, looking toward the distant fields that shimmered under flashes of thunder. Her scanner had picked up something strange, a faint distress beacon coming from the edge of her land. Most people would have ignored it in a storm like this, but Ilara was not most people. She had worked as an engineer during the border wars, fixing machines for soldiers who never came back. She had seen enough pain to know that a distress call, no matter who sent it, meant someone was in trouble. She grabbed her rain hood, a flashlight, and a small plasma pistol just in case. As she walked through the mud, her boots sank deep into the wet ground, leaving long trails behind her. The rain roared so loudly she could hardly hear her own breathing. But then, through the darkness, she saw it. A small ship, half buried in the mud near the riverbank, its hull glowing faintly blue, smoke rising from its broken engine. Her heart skipped. It was not human, not even close. The markings on the side were alien, curved letters that shimmered like liquid silver. Ilara froze for a second, fear crawling up her spine. Aliens were not welcome here, not after the last war. Any human found helping one could be executed for treason. But then she heard a sound, soft and desperate, a cry almost like a child's. Without thinking, she ran forward, pulling open the cracked hatch of the ship. Inside were three figures, their skin pale blue, faces covered in strange markings. One was lying on the floor, breathing shallowly. Another was trying to lift him but was too weak. The smallest one, with glowing eyes, looked up at her and whispered through broken words, "Help. Please." Ilara's instincts battled her fear. She should have walked away, reported them to the patrol, saved herself the risk. But she couldn't, they were freezing. Bleeding and terrified, no one deserved to die like this. Not even enemies, all right? "Come on," she said, motioning them to follow. The taller alien shook his head weakly. "They'll find us. Fleet coming." "Then you better move fast," Ilara replied, pulling his arm over her shoulder. Together they stumbled through the rain toward her cabin. Slipping on the muddy path by the time they reached her door, she was drenched, her hair sticking to her face. She pushed them inside, locking the door behind them. The fire inside the cabin flickered, casting a warm glow over the cold, trembling strangers. She dragged blankets from the shelf and threw them over their shoulders. Steam rose from their wet clothes as they huddled near the fire. One of them, clearly older, had a deep wound across his chest. Ilara rushed to her first aid kit and began cleaning it. Ignoring his flinch, the smaller one watched her hands carefully, amazed that a human would help. "You're safe here," Ilara said softly, even though she wasn't sure it was true. Outside, thunder rolled again, shaking the glass windows. She could see faint lights moving across the clouds. Patrol drones searching for signals. Her heart pounded as she closed the curtains. "What are your names?" she asked quietly. The smallest one spoke through a translator that sparked every few seconds. "I'm Sale. This is Care. And that one is our brother, Nair." Care's eyes were sharp despite the exhaustion. "You should not help us, human," he said. "If they find us here, they will destroy you too." Ilara smiled faintly, trying to hide her fear. "I've already made my choice." She turned back to the wounded one and wrapped a bandage around his chest. The alien skin was warm and smooth like glass, the blood silver in the light as she worked. She noticed strange burn marks on their armor, marks made by fleet weapons. Outlaws, she thought. Fugitives from the Galactic fleet. She wanted to ask why they were here, but one look at their faces told her they'd suffered enough tonight. When she finally sat down, the storm outside had begun to calm. The roof still dripped water, and the floor was covered in muddy footprints. She looked at the three aliens now sleeping near her fireplace. Their breathing slow, their faces peaceful for the first time in who knows how long. And for a brief moment, she felt something strange, not fear, but connection. She had lost her own brother during the war, and now, somehow, she was saving someone else's. The sound of thunder faded, replaced by the distant hum of engines. Ilara's eyes widened as she stepped toward the window. In the far distance, through the clearing mist, she saw lights moving in formation across the sky, fleet patrols, dozens of them, searching the valleys, scanning for signals. She turned off every light in her house and whispered, Don't make a sound, the alien stirred. Eyes wide with terror, the youngest clutched her sleeve. They will come, he said, voice trembling. Ilara nodded, her jaw tight. Let them come, she whispered back. Lightning flashed again, and for a heartbeat, she saw her reflection in the glass, a human standing against a galaxy. She didn't know it yet. But that night's choice would ignite a story the stars would never forget. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than thunder. Ilara stood by the window, watching mist rise from the soaked fields like ghosts escaping the ground. The aliens were still asleep near the dying fire, their silver bloodstains on her floor looking like melted moonlight. Her heart beat fast with the thought of what she had done. If the patrols found them here, she would lose everything, her home, her freedom, her life. Yet something inside her whispered that helping them was the right thing, something deeper than fear. When the sun finally pushed through the gray clouds, she began preparing food. Her hands shook as she placed bread and water on the table. The youngest alien, Sail, woke first, blinking against the light. He looked at her with wide, curious eyes. You did not tell the soldiers, he said softly. No, she replied, I didn't. He smiled weakly. Then maybe humans are not all monsters, Ilara sighed. Maybe aliens aren't either. A few minutes later, Care, the eldest, woke up and tried to stand. His movements were slow, heavy with pain, but his pride didn't let him show it. He looked around her small cabin, the tools, the half-broken machines, the photographs on the wall. This place, he said, is peaceful. It was, Ilara answered. Until last night, Care tilted his head, his golden eyes thoughtful. You should not have helped us. Human, he said quietly. The fleet will come. They always come. Then we'll deal with them, she said, her voice firmer than she expected. She wanted to ask what made them outlaws, but before she could, the youngest one whispered something in their own tongue. Care's face changed. He looked tense, alert. Ilara noticed the beeping sound coming from a small device strapped to his wrist. It was cracked and sparking, but it still pulsed with a faint red light. What is that? She asked quickly. Care hesitated, then replied, a tracker from the fleet. They put them in every ship, every soldier, every slave. He smashed it against the wall, sparks flying. The sound echoed in the small cabin like a scream. Ilara froze, realizing that the signal could have already been sent. Without another word, she led them into her basement. It was dark, filled with old machines from her engineering days, dust-covered but still functional. We'll hide down here, she said, flipping switches and powering up her old signal jammer. The hum of electricity filled the room. She adjusted the settings until the lights flickered. The jammer was weak but enough to block local scans. Care looked at her, half in disbelief. You are risking everything for strangers. Ilara smiled faintly. Strangers are just friends who need a chance. Hours passed and the cabin above them stayed quiet. Ilara worked on repairing their small translator device while the others rested. The wounded brother, Nair, groaned in pain. His breathing was shallow, his veins glowing faintly under his skin. Ilara mixed a healing serum from her old medkit and injected it carefully. Care watched her in silence, then said, You are a medic? Engineer, she corrected. But I learned what I had to during the war. Care nodded slowly. Then you have seen what the fleet does. She didn't answer. But her eyes said enough. After a while, the translator came back to life. Flickering with static, Sail spoke through it. We were rebels once, not criminals. We tried to stop them. Stop who? She asked. The fleet, Care said darkly. They destroy planets that refuse their control. We escaped with proof of their crimes. He pointed to a small metal chip hidden in his armor. This contains everything. But they will kill anyone who has it. Ilara stared at the chip. Something so small it could fit on her fingertip, yet powerful enough to threaten the galaxy. You think hiding in my basement will stop them? She said quietly. Care's voice was low. No. But it gives hope another hour to breathe. Suddenly, a sound outside made them all freeze, engines faint but growing louder. Ilara ran upstairs and peeked through the window. 2 patrol drones hovered above the valley, scanning the ground with red light. Her jammer flickered again. It was losing power. She raced back down, her heart pounding. We need to strengthen the field or they'll detect you. Care and Sail joined her, working quickly to reroute energy through the old batteries. Sparks flew. The lights dimmed, and the jammer whined like a dying beast. Then at last it stabilized. The hum deepened and the drones outside drifted away. Fooled by the interference, for a long moment no one spoke. Only the sound of their breathing filled the basement. Then Care said quietly, "You saved us twice now." Alara smiled tiredly. "Don't count yet, the day isn't over." She leaned against the wall, her eyes heavy but alert. Care looked at her curious. "Why are you helping us truly?" Alara didn't answer right away. She remembered the faces of her fallen team, humans who died because someone higher up decided their lives didn't matter. She looked back at him and said, "Because I know what it's like to be abandoned." Outside, the mist thickened again, and far beyond the hills, a faint blue flash lit the clouds. A fleet ship had entered the planet's orbit. Scanning for the missing fugitives, Alara didn't see it yet. But the next sunrise would bring war to her doorstep, and every secret she chose to protect would soon come to light. The next morning arrived too fast. Bringing light but no peace, the storm clouds were gone. Yet the air still carried the heavy scent of metal and fear. Alara stood outside her cabin, pretending to fix the solar panels while her mind raced with worry. The aliens stayed hidden in the basement beneath her feet, silent and still. Every gust of wind made her flinch. Every distant hum sounded like engines in the sky. She had hardly slept, her thoughts spinning like broken machinery. How long could she keep this secret? How long before the fleet came searching? And then, as if the universe heard her question, she saw it, a patrol ship, silver and sleek, gliding low over the valley. Its searchlights swept across the hills like eyes that never blinked. The insignia on its hull gleamed in the sun, the mark of the Galactic fleet. Alara's stomach twisted. She rushed inside, her boots leaving muddy prints on the wooden floor. "Care," she whispered urgently through the vent that led to the basement. "They're here." The aliens below stirred, Care's deep voice answering calmly. "Stay composed, human. They will test you before they strike." Her hands trembled as she wiped sweat from her brow. Moments later, a loud knock shook her door. She froze, heart hammering. Then came another knock, harder this time, followed by a deep voice. "Galactic Fleet Patrol? Open up for inspection?" Alara inhaled slowly, forcing her face into a calm mask before opening the door. Outside stood 3 armored officers, their visors reflecting her own frightened face. The lead officer, tall and cold, glanced around. "Ma'am, we detected a foreign signal in this region last night." "Signal?" she repeated, pretending to sound confused. "Must be the old relay tower. It shorts out after storms." He scanned her porch, eyes narrowing. "You live here alone?" "Yes," she lied smoothly. "Just me and a cat that doesn't like visitors." The officer smirked slightly. "Then your cat must make a lot of noise," behind him. A soldier pointed toward the ground. "Sir?" "Tracks." Alara's pulse jumped, muddy footprints leading from the river to her door. She laughed lightly, forcing confidence into her voice. "That's mine. I went looking for a power coil last night." The officer's gaze lingered on her face for too long, studying every flicker of emotion. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You understand, human. Helping fugitives is an act of treason." "I understand," she replied evenly, "and I'm not stupid enough to do that." He gave a thin smile, but his eyes remained cold. "Permission to check your property," he said. Already stepping past her, Alara's throat tightened. "You need authorization for that," she said firmly. He paused, turning slightly toward her. "Are you refusing an inspection?" She took a deep breath. "No, I'm asking you to follow your own rules." For a moment, the silence was unbearable, only broken by the faint hum of his scanning device. Finally, he lowered it, clearly annoyed. "Fine. We'll check the nearby fields." He turned to leave, but then stopped, looking at the floorboards under her feet. "Old house," he muttered. "Sounds hollow." Her heart skipped, but she forced a casual laugh. "That's what happens when you build on swampy soil." The officer gave her one last long stare before walking back toward the ship. "Stay alert, ma'am," he said. "The fugitives are dangerous and desperate." Alara nodded silently, watching as they boarded their patrol craft, engines roaring to life. Only when the ship disappeared into the horizon did she finally exhale. Her knees nearly gave out as she locked the door again. She pressed her hand against the floor, tapping twice in their signal for safe. The basement hatch opened slowly, and Care climbed out, his golden eyes sharp and unreadable. "You handled them well," he said quietly. "Your fear didn't show. I was terrified. Alara admitted, sitting down. But I guess fear teaches you how to lie. Sale peeked out next, looking around the cabin nervously. They almost found us, yes, she said softly. And next time they might. Care placed his hand on her shoulder, heavy and steady. You don't have to keep doing this. Alara looked up, her eyes hard. You don't know me, she said. I don't quit halfway. Care seemed to consider her words, then nodded, respect flashing in his gaze. He reached into his armor and took out the small metallic chip, the one containing the fleet's secret data. If they find this, he said, they won't ask questions. They'll burn everything. Alara stared at it, feeling its weight even though it was small as a nail. What's on it? She asked quietly. Care's face darkened. Proof that the fleet isn't a protector, but a butcher. Before she could respond, a sudden alarm from her equipment cut through the room. Her scanner displayed a red beacon, an active signal detected nearby. Alara's blood went cold. That's impossible. I shut everything down. Care snatched the device and frowned. They marked this place before leaving, a passive trace beacon. Now they can return any time. Alara stood, panic rising. We have to move them off-world. But Care shook his head. Too late for that, human. The fleet will return before nightfall. He looked toward the window where sunlight now glinted on the distant horizon. They think they hunt criminals, he said, but soon they'll realize they've cornered the wrong prey. Alara tightened her grip on her plasma rifle. Her quiet farm had turned into a battlefield, her act of mercy now a declaration of rebellion. The sound of engines echoed faintly once more in the distance, and as she stared at the sky, she whispered to herself, let's see how far kindness can go before it burns. Night returned sooner than expected. The valley was quiet again, but it was the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl. Alara sat at her workbench, her trembling fingers trying to repair the fried jammer circuit. The dim yellow light flickered above her head, buzzing softly like an insect trapped in a jar. Down in the basement, the aliens waited in silence. Even their breathing sounded tense. No one dared to speak too loudly. Not after what happened that morning. Care stood by the hatch, his tall shadow stretching across the floor. He had been staring at the night sky through a narrow window for hours. His golden eyes reflected the stars like a predator waiting for the first sign of danger. Alara glanced at him and said quietly, You're expecting them, aren't you? He nodded slowly. The fleet never leaves a trace unchased, she sighed. You said they kill anyone who helps you. What kind of justice is that? Care looked down, his voice heavy. The kind built on fear, not truth. Alara pushed her chair back and walked to the window. Outside, the sky looked calm, too calm. The air smelled like rain, but the clouds were glowing faintly blue. She squinted, realizing the glow wasn't natural. It pulsed in rhythm, faint but steady, like a heartbeat in the heavens. Care suddenly stepped forward, eyes narrowing. That's a scan beam. Alara's stomach dropped. A what? The fleet is sweeping the atmosphere, Care said, his tone grim. They're trying to find us through radiation traces. Without hesitation, Alara dashed back to the basement. Flipping every switch on the jammer, the lights dimmed, and a deep humming filled the room as the machine came alive again. Sparks danced across its coils, painting the walls in orange light. She adjusted the knobs, sweat running down her neck. Sale covered his ears as the machine screamed from overload. Then a silence, the hum dropped to a low, steady beat. For a moment they thought it worked, until a loud crash outside made the cabin shake. Alara grabbed her plasma pistol and moved to the door. Care followed close, motioning for the others to stay hidden. Through the window she saw a flash of light in the distance. Something had fallen from the sky. A drone, burning, spinning out of control, slamming into the muddy field behind her house. She ran toward it, mud splashing against her boots. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and ozone. When she reached the crash site, she saw the drone's surface flickering with strange patterns before it died completely. It projected a hologram, a cold metallic voice speaking in Galactic standard. Unauthorized transmission detected. Human activity under observation. Fleet en route. Alara's breath caught. She looked up at the night sky, and there it was, faint lights moving in formation, like a school of silver fish gliding silently through the dark. The fleet had found them. She ran back inside, her voice breaking the silence. They're coming. Care's hand tightened around his weapon. Then we make them regret it. Sael looked terrified, his small hands trembling. But how? We have no ship, no weapon strong enough. Ilara slammed her fist against the table. We have one thing they don't. Truth. Care frowned. Truth doesn't stop plasma bolts. No, she said, her eyes burning. But it can start a war they can't win. She pointed at the chip hidden inside Care's armor. That data, it shows what they did to your people. Right, Care nodded slowly. Entire colonies erased. Their bodies turned to dust so no one could ever prove it. Ilara stepped closer. Then we show everyone. We send it across every frequency we can reach. He stared at her like she was insane. They'll trace it in seconds, he warned. I don't care, she said. If we die, let them die knowing the galaxy will remember our names. The basement filled with the hum of old machines waking from years of sleep. Ilara pulled open metal drawers connecting ancient cables. Her hands moved like lightning, fixing, rerouting, adjusting. The translator blinked, the jammer hummed. The screen glowed pale blue. Care and Sale exchanged glances, admiration mixed with fear. She's human, Care whispered, but she fights like one of us. She's more than that, Sale said softly. She's hope. Just as they prepared to upload the data, the entire cabin trembled violently. A deep roar rolled through the valley like thunder underwater. Ilara ran to the window and froze. A massive shadow moved across the sky. A fleet cruiser entering the atmosphere. Its engines blazed with red fire, cutting through the clouds like a blade. The air pressure dropped, rattling her windows and sending tools crashing to the floor. They're not scanning anymore, Care said, his voice steady. They've already found us. Ilara turned off the light, her face half hidden in the dark. Her voice was calm but cold. Then let's make them wish they hadn't. Outside, the stars disappeared under the glow of the approaching ships. The signal beam from above grew brighter, cutting through the clouds like a divine spear. In that moment, Ilara knew the sky itself had turned against her, but so had her fear. She stood tall, surrounded by outlaws and machines, a single human, ready to defy an empire, and somewhere deep in the heavens, the fleet commander watched the signal on his screen and whispered, "Target acquired." The night air was heavy with the smell of rain and smoke. Ilara had not rested, her hands still shaking from the sight of the cruiser cutting through the sky. Every sound outside made her heart race. The creak of wood, the drip of water, the distant hum of engines above the clouds. Care and Sale checked their weapons again and again, but they both knew it was useless if the fleet arrived in force. They were cornered, surrounded by fields, sky, and fate. Down in the basement, the old machine still glowed faintly blue. The data chip rested inside the transmitter, pulsing like a heartbeat waiting to be sent. Ilara looked at it and whispered, "Once this goes out, there's no turning back." Care nodded. "Then let it go." But before she could hit the final switch, a faint knock echoed through the door above. Everyone froze. The knock came again, softer this time, almost polite. Sale whispered, "Fleet soldiers?" Ilara shook her head. "No soldier knocks twice." She climbed the stairs quietly, peering through the peephole, and her breath caught. It was her neighbor, old Duran, holding a lantern against the darkness. His coat was soaked, his expression nervous. Ilara opened the door just a crack. "Duran, what are you doing out here at this hour?" He hesitated, his eyes darting toward the fields. "Ilara, strange ships flying over my land, lights in the sky. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" She forced a calm smile. "Just a storm passing through." But his eyes didn't soften. They narrowed, full of suspicion. "I saw movement near your barn last night," he said slowly. "Figures that weren't human." Ilara's blood turned cold. "You should go home, Duran," she said quietly. "It's not safe to wander tonight." But he didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer and lowered his voice. "You always were kind-hearted, Ilara. But kindness gets people killed." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He sighed heavily. "I told them." Her throat tightened. "Told who?" He looked away, shame flickering in his eyes. "The fleet. They offered a reward, and I couldn't refuse." For a moment, Ilara couldn't breathe. The rain started again, tapping softly against the roof like a cruel rhythm. "You led them here," she whispered, her voice trembling. Duran's face twisted. "I didn't know they'd come this fast, I swear." He stopped when he saw the light glowing through the clouds, multiple red beams descending from the sky. The fleet was here. Ilara's eyes turned cold. "You should run," she said, "and pray they don't think you're one of us." Before he could speak again, she slammed the door shut and bolted it downstairs. Care and Sale had already heard the engines. They were preparing defenses, setting up plasma traps and old turrets Ilara had once used for scavenger protection. Outside, the sound of landing crafts echoed through the valley. Shaking the ground, fleet soldiers in silver armor poured out. Moving like shadows in the rain, Ilara checked her rifle and whispered, "They'll surround us soon." Care handed her a small device. "If they breach the door, press this, it will release the energy core." She glanced at it, realizing what it meant. "That's a bomb." He nodded. "Better ashes than capture," lightning flashed, revealing dozens of soldiers spreading across the field. Their visors glowed red, their scanners sweeping the cabin walls. Ilara could see their reflections through the window. Like demons made of metal, her heart pounded. But her face stayed calm. She turned to Care and said, "The data must go. No matter what happens," he hesitated. "You'll die if you stay." "I already chose that the night I opened my door," she replied. Sale climbed onto the upper floor, opening a small vent. He released a tiny drone, silent and fast, carrying the data chip hidden in its core. It shot upward through the storm, its blue trail fading into the night. "Transmission started," Sale whispered. A second later, alarms blared from the fleet ships above. "They detected it," Care shouted. "They're locking onto the signal." Ilara grabbed the rifle, took position near the window, and aimed at the nearest trooper. The first plasma shot lit the night like fire. The soldiers opened return fire, red bolts tearing through the air. Glass shattered, wood burned. The cabin shook with every blast, basement wall. Care shouted, "They're breaching." Ilara ran downstairs, firing again and again. Her shots precise despite the chaos. The smell of ozone filled the room, the air thick with smoke and heat. One of the turrets exploded, throwing sparks across the ceiling. Through it all, she kept shouting, "Glenn, protect the drone. Keep it in the air." Care fought beside her, his energy blade slicing through the door as soldiers broke in. Sale screamed, ducking under falling debris. The entire house groaned under the weight of the attack. Then came the voice, cold and mechanical, amplified by loudspeakers outside. Human Ilara Varine, surrender the fugitives and step outside. Ilara's grip tightened on her rifle. Her eyes blazing, she shouted back, "You'll have to come in and take them." For a second, there was silence, then the commander replied, "Very well." Dozens of drones lit up the night, surrounding her home in a ring of fire. Ilara looked at Care. "Once the data's safe, I want you gone." Care shook his head. "We don't leave our own behind." She smiled faintly. "I'm not one of you." He met her gaze and said quietly, "You are now." Outside, the rain poured harder, washing blood and ash into the earth. The cabin walls burned with crimson light as the fleet advanced step by step. Inside, Ilara and the aliens stood shoulder to shoulder, weapons raised in the distance far above the storm. The tiny drone carrying their truth kept flying higher and higher. The galaxy was about to hear their story. But for Ilara, the battle for her home had just begun. The first blast hit the cabin like thunder. Wood splintered, dust filled the air, and smoke curled through the cracks like black fog. Ilara coughed, wiping ash from her face as the floor shook under her boots. Care shouted orders in his alien tongue, his voice calm even as the world burned around them. Sale crouched behind a fallen beam, reloading the plasma cartridges with trembling hands. The fleet soldiers advanced through the fire, their armor glowing red under the stormlight. Ilara leaned out the window and fired, each shot sharp and bright against the rain. Her aim was steady, every blast cutting down another drone before it could strike. She had no army, no backup, only courage and a cause. Each pull of the trigger was a message. Humanity doesn't bow. Care's blade hummed beside her, slicing through metal and smoke. The clash of plasma and steel echoed through the valley like a song of defiance. Outside, the fleet's commander watched from his hovering craft. A tall figure in gleaming armor, his voice cold through the comms. "One human and 3 fugitives defying the Galactic fleet," he said. "End this quickly." Dozens more soldiers poured out, surrounding the burning cabin from all sides. Explosions tore through the field, flames rising like angry ghosts in the night. Ilara felt the heat licking her face as she ducked behind the wall. Her rifle was nearly empty. Her power cells running dry, Care limped beside her, blood on silver and bright, dripping from his side. "Leave me," he growled. I can't fight anymore. Alara glared at him. We started this together. We finish it together. Sale crawled toward them, clutching the comm unit. The drone made it past the upper atmosphere, he said breathlessly. The data is out. Alara's eyes widened. The truth was free now, unstoppable. For the first time, hope burned brighter than fire. But the fleet didn't stop. They stormed through the field, heavy boots sinking in mud, rifles raised, voices unified in a single command. Eliminate them! Alara dragged Care toward the basement stairs, shouting over the chaos. We fall back. Regroup below. They stumbled down just as a missile tore through the roof. The explosion threw her across the room, her ears ringing, her vision white with dust. When she opened her eyes, half the cabin was gone. Through the hole in the ceiling, she could see the stars, cold, distant witnesses to her rebellion. Care pushed himself up, his breathing ragged. You've done enough, human. Alara grinned through the blood on her lips. Not yet. She reached for the small detonator he had given her earlier. The energy core trigger. If the fleet captured them now, the data might be traced back, the truth silenced forever. She looked at Care and whispered, Get Sale out through the tunnel. He shook his head violently. No, you... She cut him off. That's an order. The young alien hesitated, tears glowing in his silver eyes. Alara, he whispered, why do you fight for us? She smiled faintly. Because once, someone fought for me. Her hand tightened on the detonator, her heart calm now, steady as the rain outside. The fleet soldiers broke through the doorway, their visors flashing red, weapons aimed. Drop your weapon, one shouted. Surrender and live. Alara raised her head, eyes burning with fire. You call this living? She raised her rifle one last time, firing until it clicked empty. The soldiers returned fire, but she didn't duck. She stepped forward through the smoke, defiant and unbroken. Every heartbeat was louder than the blasts. Every second a lifetime of courage. Care dragged Sale through the tunnel, his voice breaking. She's staying to save us. They turned just in time to see the cabin erupt in light. The explosion rose like a second sun, swallowing the valley in flames. The shockwave threw them into the mud, the sky lit with burning debris. And through it all, Care thought he saw her, a human silhouette standing in the fire, unyielding, proud, and still holding her rifle. When the smoke cleared, the fleet's cruiser hovered silently above the ruins. The commander stared down at the devastation, his voice cold but shaken. One human destroyed half a regiment, he murmured, for aliens. He didn't notice the faint blue signal blinking in the sky. The data transmission still spreading across every galactic network. In the mud below, Care and Sile watched the fire fade. She's gone, Sile whispered. Care shook his head. No, she's become something more. He looked toward the stars, his voice trembling with awe. The human who fought the fleet, he said softly, and made them fear their own conscience. The night that began with fire ended in silence. Smoke curled across the valley like ghostly ribbons, carrying the scent of ash and memory. The ruins of Alara's cabin still glowed faintly, embers whispering her name into the wind. Care stood among the wreckage, his armor cracked, his eyes empty. Beside him, Sale knelt in the mud, clutching a broken fragment of Alara's rifle. The dawn light crept over the hills, turning the world gold and gray. For a long time, no one spoke. Even the fleet ships in the sky hung motionless as if the entire galaxy held its breath. Then, from far above, a signal began to echo through the stars. It started as static, soft, distant, then turned into sound. A voice, human, calm, recorded moments before the explosion. This is Alara Varen, it said. Engineer of Earth, protector of truth, and friend to those the galaxy calls criminals. Care's head snapped upward, his eyes wide. The signal grew louder, spreading from one planet to another. It carried images, recordings of destroyed colonies, bodies turned to dust, ships raining fire over innocent worlds. The proof the fleet had buried for years was now alive across every broadcast channel. People everywhere saw it. Miners on Mars, traders on the Orion Belt, refugees from 100 lost worlds. And they heard her final words: "If kindness is treason, then I am guilty. If mercy is rebellion, then let mercy rule." Care's chest tightened. Sale wept openly, all across the stars. Billions listened to a human voice that refused to die. And something inside the galaxy began to change. On the fleet's flagship, the commander stood frozen, his screen filled with the same transmission. His officers whispered in disbelief. "She exposed everything," one said. "The rebellion will rise again." The commander's jaw clenched. Shut it down. But it was too late. The message had already reached every corner of space. No jammer, no weapon, no threat could silence it now. Within days, riots broke out on fleet-controlled worlds. Colonies once loyal to the Empire demanded justice. Soldiers refused to fight. Captains deserted, and entire fleets turned their guns toward their own command. Care and Sale hid among the chaos, watching the galaxy burn not with war, but awakening. On screens across 1,000 stations, Ilara's image flickered again, her eyes calm, her voice steady. "Truth has no species," she said. "Compassion is not weakness. It is the bridge between stars." Months passed and stories spread like wildfire. They said the human woman who fought the fleet had survived, that she walked among refugees on distant worlds, healing, helping, teaching. Others said she became light itself, a guardian spirit protecting the lost. Care never corrected them. He carried her name as a vow, carved it into his blade. Ilara Varen, the human who defied fear. Sale built a monument where her cabin once stood, a small tower of glass and steel, powered by her broken jammer core. At night it glowed blue, a signal to travelers who had no home, a reminder that courage could be born in the heart of one person, and when new visitors came to the valley, humans, aliens, wanderers, Care would tell them the same story, of the woman who offered shelter in a storm, who chose kindness over safety and truth over silence, and how one human heart made the mighty fleet tremble. He would look up at the stars and whisper, "She didn't die that night." She became the voice in every conscience that says, "Do what is right, even when the sky turns against you." As dawn rose over the valley once more, the tower shimmered with light, and for a moment, through the golden mist, Care thought he saw her, standing beside the ruins, smiling softly, her coat fluttering in the wind. Then she was gone. Only the sunlight remained, bright and endless, and her words echoed once more across the galaxy. "Kindness is the spark that outlives fear."